Hello there, TikTokers. I am the Biblical Translator, and today I'm not going to be reading from the Bible. I'm going to do it's like a talk show about trust, and I'm going to be doing that on the 27th of the month, 27th, December the 27th, on my radio station. So I was writing up the notes today, and something just came to me that I thought I wanted to share with you. And I'm gonna tell you what I wrote up. I'm not going to tell you everything, but what inspired me to talk to you today. And I was talking about, can people be trusted? Because they're fallible, make mistakes, they disappoint, they're inconsistent, they're backstabbers, their insecurities take over, so does their emotions. And when you get emotional, you might say something in anger, and therefore what you say in anger can cause mistrust. And that causes skepticism. And then I said, versus God. And I said, we trust God because God is constant. It's faith led. It's dependent on our faith. Our trust is reliant on our faith in God. We feel protected because of that faith. And I've put here, God cannot fail or disappoint because we cannot see him. So we end up pointing the finger back at ourselves and on people around us. If there's an accident and we lose a family member or we lose a limb, it becomes our fault or the other driver's fault. But when we believe in the God of miracles, could he not have saved our child? Could he not have saved our limb? God could be considered as disappointing us when things do not go right, just as people do. But we are more forgiving in a God we cannot see versus people who we can. We have security in his word and promise. And it made me think, how forgiving we are of a God we cannot see. How it's easy. It's almost like a cop-out. It's easy to have faith in a God we cannot see. I remember listening to women in a Pentecostal church, and they used to say, God is my husband. And they never used to treat their not their carnal, but their material husbands properly, because they used to say that their husbands would fail them in some way. So they was always angry at their husbands, and husbands conversely angry at their wives. We find that we're always angry at people we can see and who we can point the finger at. But when we think of God, we can't point the finger at him because he is an all-seeing God. He is out of our reach. He is out of our remit. So when we feel disappointed by God, because sometimes we do. Sometimes, I remember a man saying he'd got prostate cancer, and he stopped believing in God ever since he found out he had prostate cancer. And because in his mind, God had disappointed him. He reckons he had done good all his life, and everything he had done was right. I mean, nobody can be perfect, but in his mind, he feels that God could have preserved him. God could have saved him from this grief. And so therefore, he decided he would cut God off the same way he would cut off somebody who he could physically see, who he felt had harmed him. So when we believe in God, when we put faith in a God we cannot see, because that God is blameless and faultless, What does that mean? I was trying to, it's quite deep. So I was trying to understand where I was going with this. And I'm not even sure where I'm going with this. All I know is that it's easy to be self-righteous. It's easy to claim that you are pure in thought and that you believe in a perfect God and live vicariously through God, believing that because of your relationship with God, who is perfect, you can criticize humans. You can have lack of tolerance for humans. And yet God did say, and God tells us repeatedly, we must love our neighbours as ourselves. We must love people. And if we forgive people, God will forgive us. So why do we still point fingers at other people? Why are we still so skeptical about others? Why don't we trust people? If we can trust in an entity that we cannot see, why can't we trust in an entity that we can? Where we can gather evidence and prove a situation or a behavior. We have evidence to prove that. But when we do gather evidence, it's always negative. If somebody hurts us or harms us or says the wrong thing, we take it personally. We get angry. We get hostile. We want to get revenge. Don't want to get revenge on God. Even when, some people do, but even when you lose a child, you become disabled, you lose your home, you lose your job, you lose everything. Some people, you've got all these people on the streets. Are they blaming God? Do they have a right to blame God? Do they have a right to blame someone who is able to create miracles? And if they don't believe because he hasn't saved them from this situation that they're in, does that give him less credibility? I think that the God that I serve exists. I believe that the God that I serve is within me. I believe that the God that I have faith in is within me, within my thoughts, within my entity. It's not something that I can explain, but I believe my God creates miracles for me, not necessarily the miracles I would like or the miracles that I want, but the miracles that I need to put me on firm ground, to make me think more about what I'm doing, to make me more conscious, to make me into a more credible human being, to help me to be a better example of what God's child looks like. You might look at me and think, bloody hell, look at her. She's got the thing off her shoulder. She's got that bloody wig on. She's got makeup on. She's got jewellery. What kind of child of God is she? And that's what I'm talking about, the visual, the fact that we're always pointing fingers at other people to take the focus off ourselves. Who are you? What are you offering other people? What are your words saying about you? What is your heart saying? Why are you angry, resentful, judgmental, critical of people who you can see, but you don't have those feelings or emotions for a God you can't see? We have to share the same relationship we have with God, with our fellow humans. And I think this is where I think this is what